What I would like to do now is just, if you can come up and do some, I know it's near the break, but I still think it is better to take the questions now. What do you think, David? Or do we have the break and then come back? And so we will finish the session, take the questions now. Please come up, Jans. We heard two very interesting speakers, Jans Bowl, the Chief Archivist of UNESCO, and Francis Salmon. We heard about all the challenges that they have been experiencing, how they started quite simply in Jamaica, at Mona, Jamaica, and how they progressed, particularly when one of the Prime Minister, Mr. Siaga's collections was acquired. We also heard a great deal about UNESCO, the Memory of the World program, particularly Jan's emphasis was on the international register. We know about the three registers, the national, the regional, and the international, and he gave us a whole overview of how, how the whole history actually of the program and and the whole history also of the international register. We learned he explained some of the collections on the register, which I think has been very interesting. So what I want to do now, Jean is putting her hand up at the back, but what I want to do now is just for you to whatever questions you would like to give our two presenters this morning. But before I do that, I just want to do one simple thing. There are two people in the audience who I really must acknowledge. They have worked tirelessly in archives. They have been on our National Memory of the World Committee for a number of years. In fact, they have been two persons who have been very instrumental in having the 6 registers, international registers. We also have in the regional register too, and on our national register. But the 6 international registers that we are so proud of. I want to acknowledge Lorraine Niru from UWI Library. She's sitting in the back. And Cheryl Lee Kim, who is the manager of our National Record Center at the front, has done a lot of hours and hard work. So I now turn you over to Jans and Francis. You can direct your questions.
I'm actually not sure that this is a question, but more of a comment. I wanted to say how fascinated and inspired I was by both presentations, and in particular to know that the Wilson Harris manuscripts are there in their original form. And as somebody who teaches Wilson Harris and who sees his work as integral to everything that I do in Caribbean studies, I certainly will be there very soon. I was also particularly struck by the idea of a memory of the world studies and memory of the world knowledge centers for 2 reasons. One, as Alison knows, I'm in the process of developing a collections-based PhD in St. Augustine, because I work in archives, Walcott, Beckett, whatever. I mean, and so that is and secondly, I'm also working on a documentary on disability, which has brought together a network of university lecturers in order to do this, but not just in Trinidad, which is so desperately needed, but also throughout the Caribbean, which is in itself going to be an archive. And I have already incorporated this into my own teaching at the master's level in a new course that I developed, so that what I've heard today is so kind of intimately connected with everything that I do. As I said, I don't know if there's a question. I was just really excited by everything that I heard this morning. Just wanted to say that.
Are there any other questions? Lorraine?
Right. This may not necessarily be a question, but it's something for consideration, because I know you're going to think about the life of this project as it comes to an end. And as Francis Salmon highlighted, one of the challenges that we encounter in the Caribbean is how we make hidden collections discoverable. And I know the register that you have on your website has facilitated that to some extent. But something for us to consider in the future is probably grants that the islands, smaller institutions can have access to, so that they can process literary archives and make them even more accessible. Because there are grants in the metropole. For example, the US has a hidden collection grant, and every time the Intention, the art comes out every year, I read it just to see if they change the terms so that I can apply for it. But what I'm saying, the scope, the future, even if the Diasporic Literary Archives is unable to do it, maybe the International Congress of Archives can possibly think of something along that line, or even throwing out the challenge to UNESCO Memory of the World to do something similar. Thanks.
Jans, will you like to comment?
Well, I'd just like to say concerning the whole work on education and research on the memory of the world. I think it's great to hear about these initiatives already that you have already taken, and right now is the moment to develop ideas. It's really a kind of brainstorming period. These ideas on developing both the knowledge center and the educational activities in general, they are very new, and it is about bringing people together and bringing those ideas together. So I think, since you have a very active Memory of the World Committee, I think if you could share your experiences, it would be great. So, and then, as I said, this committee on education and research would be very happy to have this network as a corresponding member, a kind of formalized status, so you could feed into that process with your ideas and exchange with others. And then, and concerning the registry and of the whole gathering of information on existing collections, on best practices, and so on. This is also part of the building of the knowledge centers at all levels, indeed, at the national, regional, and international. So all those ideas, it's really the right moment to come up with them. So, thanks.
Thank you. Alison?
Just really wanted to follow up on Jean and Lorraine's point, and also pick up on something that Francis said about student assistance. And I'm wondering whether one of the other things that we could perhaps, I kind of, I'm a bit daunted by the number of registers already imagined, but I'm wondering whether there could be a kind of internship volunteering register as well, where people, I'm sure, would be, interested in coming and spending a bit of time cataloguing a Wilson Harris. I can already think of people who would volunteer immediately. So I'm just wondering whether that's also another opportunity that we could kind of try and coordinate.
Well,
dependent on skills, obviously. I know you need people who are skilled.
At Mona, we regularly have, every year, it's part of our policy actually, we do have interns at Mona. We just have never had anybody who would be interested in the special collections. And of course it would have to be for a reasonable length of time, because these things do take a lot of time, but we are open to attachments, internships, volunteers, whatever.
Okay. Janice, did you want to say something?
Good morning, everyone. I am Janice Blake from the University of the Trinidad and Tobago. First of all, I would really like to commend Francis for an excellent paper, and I really think we should make it available for us. Secondly, I studied in Jamaica many, many years ago, and while there, I was always impressed with the way Jamaicans seem to get things done, and I found a lot of that coming through in your paper, and I was really pleased. I also like the idea of getting all of the staff involved and on board. And I think this is a wonderful opportunity for all of us to think, especially us in TNT, because the mention you made of the method of acquisition of the Edward Siagas papers resonated with me, and Helena would know what I'm talking about, because we had a similar experience. So once again, thank you very much, congratulations, and I really hope you make this paper available.
Well, thank you for that. Well, you know that in Jamaica for a long time, we have had to move on despite our lack of resources. So that I think it's probably now just a way of life. We just go ahead and do what we have to do.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, are there any more questions? Well, if there are no more questions, I would like us to now have our break, and then we will come back. So we probably just have a short break, a 15-minute break, and then we will come back and